Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have back with us Steve Porter. And Steve is the co-owner of the Stillwater River Publications out in Rhode Island. They've moved from Pawtucket to West Warwick. They have a little bigger place now. He and his wife Dawn are the owners of the establishment. And he has been on our show, golly, long before COVID. And he does a lot of things for authors. You do publishing for the authors. You're going to have them coming and doing speaking. When did you first, for people who don't remember your interview, when did you and Dawn decide to open Stillwater?
It was an evolution.
Yeah.
It was never a plan. It was never intended. But we had published our own books. Dawn had written a children's book, and I had a novel. And we were dissatisfied with the marketing and promotion that the arts community in the areas gave to authors specifically.
Yeah.
So we started our own nonprofit, the Association of Rhode Island Authors, which led to us helping a lot of authors who were looking for guidance with their publishing.
Definitely.
And that evolved into Stillwater River Publications.
And you started in Pawtucket. I haven't ever made it there. And now you're in West Warwick, which I think is even further for me to get to. I know you're going to 146 to get there now. How do you get to your new store?
Well, from depending where you're coming from, 146 south to eventually to 95, and then 95 to Route 117 exit in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
About dead center of the state, really, and we're just a mile or two from there.
It's a bookstore as well.
Yeah, we opened 6 years ago our own full-service retail independent bookstore to kind of go along with the publishing enterprise, and that's done extremely well. And
you used to run we went one time, it was overwhelmingly fantastic, the December, the Rhode Island Authors Expo?
Yes.
Now, you've handed the gavel to someone else now, right?
Correct.
Well, that's what I heard. You turned it over. Why did you do that? Why?
There are just so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
The irony is, I was a marketing consultant, and my wife and I decided we would get involved in this business, really as a way to give myself more time to write.
Yeah.
So if I was focused on publishing other people and focused on bookstore stuff, I would have more time to write, and that was the point of all this. And it exploded to the point where I have no time to write now at all. And when we formed the Association of Rhode Island Authors, and then started the annual expo, and this year will be the 11th, happening on December 2nd.
Now it's no longer in Cranston.
It did move, It's at the Crown Plaza in Warwick.
Yeah.
Right at the highway, right at the exit.
Can't miss it.
Can't miss it.
And then it's going to be December what?
It'll be December 2nd, and I believe it runs from 10 to 4 at the Crown Plaza.
10 to 4. How many? I lost track. I couldn't possibly meet all the authors when I went to the one in Cranston. What was that? Something on the Common? What was that called? The one when it was held in
the previous venue was Rhodes on the Patuxent.
Yeah.
And that's in Cranston. It's a very well-known event venue. It's been very historic.
Yeah.
And they sadly had construction or physical issues with the building. They found that the floors were starting to sag. It's a 200-year-old building. And they
never knew it.
So they weren't completely confident that it would be safe to have large events in there anymore.
That was a large event. How many do you know, that come?
Well, we bring in 125 authors, bring in about 12 to 1,400 readers, and then we'd have workshops and presentations and things going on all day.
I remember that was up to the side in another room. That was awesome. And the wonderful thing about what Steve does with this every December is that they're authors of so many different venues. I love that. You could have sci-fi next to a children's author.
And that's by design. The number of authors in our area, the quality of the books, the diversity of the books is mind-blowing when you get them all in one place. And the most difficult part of being an author isn't the writing, but it's getting the word out about your book. So that, because there's such a noisy world out there that it's and you're just one person in many cases. So how do you let the world know? So events like this are perfect for that. And
I remember walking in, it was absolutely fantastic, and I looked I went, oh my God. How many aisles were there? I wanted to meet, of course, because I love to have the authors on the show.
Right.
And help them get out there. And I thought, there's no way I can possibly meet every single one in here. And you feel bad, because you're going down the aisle. And there's, how they sit there and they're looking at you like, oh, come to my table, because it's like a dog that wants to be adopted at the shelter. I'm like, I can't do this. But I know we've had a number of them that were in the expo. And there was one fellow, a sci-fi. I know Paul loves sci-fi. And I can't think of his name. Oh, he does really great. No, wait a minute. Was it sci-fi? Yeah, it was sci-fi. He had a great big sign. He has a series, and I can't think. Oh, forgive me. I can't think of his name. But I think he's been in it for every time, maybe, that it's been there. Steve, while we're talking about it, how would people get in touch with you if they'd like to be an author that participates?
They can just go to our website, stillwaterpress.com. And I could forward information to them about the Rhode Island Author Expo and the Association of Rhode Island Authors.
December 2nd at which again now? Where is it?
It's at the Crown Plaza in Warwick, Rhode Island, right at Route 95, and I believe it's Route 113. So it's, as you said, you can't miss it.
I will get the word out, and I will. I think that's amazing. And do you think that this is hopefully going to continue for more years to come?
Well, with no doubt. Every year we seem to get a little bit busier. There are a few more authors want to participate.
Oh, yeah.
When people come and they see what's there, it's a fun day.
Oh, yeah.
If you like books. If you don't like books, you're going to have a miserable time. Yeah. But if you like to read and you like books and you just walk around and just the diversity of titles is just mind-blowing. And you'll go from table to table to table, realize you've been there an hour and a half, and you've got 125 to go. I don't
know how you did it.
It's a lot of fun.
Do you jury them in?
It's right now. It's a first come first serve operation. The association members get the first crack at it, and people start signing up for that in the summer.
They do.
Yeah. So it's where here we are. When they're starting to get into the fall season.
Stillwaterpress.com or .org.
You can go to stillwaterpress.com.
And then there'll be a thing where they can get in touch.
Yep, they can email us through the website.
Right now, you've probably noticed it. You and Don have noticed. Wow, fantasy for the young adults is big right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know sci-fi is always there, but in libraries you'll almost see sci-fi fantasy labeled together. It's not always the same, is it?
Science fiction and fantasy are separate genres, but there is some overlap. So they're such popular areas of both reading and writing.
Yeah.
And there are an infinite number of sub-genres from that.
Yeah. Okay, what street again is Stillwater Press, the bookshop, located at?
We're at 1745 Main Street.
1745 in West.
And that's in West Warwick.
Mm-hmm. And what are your hours again?
We're open every day.
Sunday also?
Sunday also.
Oh,
open.
Cool. There you go.
Monday through Saturday, 9 to 7, and 9 to 5 on Sunday.
Now, that's the way it should be. Mm-hmm. Too many stores. I mean, Tatnut, God love them up here in Westboro. Mm-hmm. You've been to Tatnut,
Oh,
right?
yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Well, they close it. I don't know, 5, 6, or 7. And I know in COVID they weren't open, the usual later hours. And I was amazed. But to see somebody stay open, I mean, that is so good. Because people go to work and they need time to come home, eat, and then come into your store.
So every store has you have to learn your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I know we learned our neighborhood in Pawtucket. It was very much an afternoon store.
Yeah.
Because that's when people were doing their bus transfers and they were coming into the city and leaving the city. At night it quieted down a lot. The neighborhood we're in now seems to be much busier after 4, 5, 6 o'clock.
That's what I'm figuring.
Yeah.
I told them in Tatnut, I says, people after work want to come here, but if you cut them off at 6 or 7, that's kind of a tough thing. Steve co-wrote a book, and what was his name? What's his name?
Oh, you mean Brian Benedus? Yes.
What a book that was. Had panic disorder, especially with bridges. Did he come to you, Steve, to write it together?
He did. He reached out to me. He was just to give a little background on Brian. He had fear and panic disorders. He'd grown up with them. He'd had them his whole life. He didn't know what they were. He tried various ways of coping with it.
Yeah.
And he would put himself. He was also not your typical person who's scared of everything. You think of that 98-pound weakling, kind of
Yeah.
cowering in the corner.
Yeah.
He was a competitive weightlifter.
Yeah.
And he would go to, these competitions and win them. And he was, very muscular, big guy.
Yeah.
But how do you tell all the guys that you're working out with in the gym that you're afraid to cross the street to go out for a beer?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the world he lived in.
Yeah.
And he called me and said that he had a manuscript. He knew it wasn't very good. It needed work. But he thought he had a great story to tell.
Yeah.
And he and I sat down and we spent a year rewriting it. Mostly revising it, reorganizing it, filling in some missing pieces.
Yeah.
And in the end put out quite a memoir on his life and how he's
definitely. What was it called again?
scared to death, do it anyway.
That was got to be one of my favorite books I've ever read because I could
Oh, thank
relate
you.
to it. I used to have that, not severe, but I went through a thing where it would be all I could do to drive from Whitensville to Milford. I had to take it slow. There was nothing to be afraid of, but tell me that. And I'd turn around and come back, inch by inch. And then I had a counselor say to me, well, Jan, what's on the other end? What are you looking forward to? Concentrate on that. How badly do you want to get up to that store? Or that, bookstore or that library?
Mm-hmm.
And I began to say, you better believe it. I'm going to, I got to get there. And that's how I did it. I wanted it badly enough.
And it's essentially, this is exactly what the things he went through. He would have business meetings, high-level business meetings,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't be afraid of those.
No.
He was very confident in his business, but getting in the car and driving there would give him such anxiety that he'd have a map of the hospitals
Yep.
on the seat.
Yep.
So he would drive from hospital to hospital because he'd be hyperventilating and he's afraid he's going to pass out or have a heart attack.
Right. And then he got stuck on a bridge that time.
And then that's the opening story of the book where he gets stuck on the bridge.
Oh.
And he's in, somewhere on the New Jersey Turnpike.
Yeah.
And if anybody's traveled that New Jersey Turnpike, you know how traffic can be. And
Yeah.
he got stuck at the top of a bridge in traffic and then his truck overheated. And he just couldn't take it anymore. And he had to sat in the truck, and he talks about this in the
Yeah.
book, making the decision, do I get out of the truck and run, or do I get out of the truck and just jump off the bridge and just get over this?
Yeah. The good news is he made it.
And he made it. He
made
did.
it. Okay.
He made the right decision.
Yeah. We've been talking with Steve Porter, and he's the co-owner of the Stillwater River publications in Rhode Island, and also the store. It's called Stillwater Press, the store, right?
Stillwater Books, yes.
Stillwater Books.
Mm-hmm. And it's a full-service independent bookstore, both new and used. We've got a lot more space now, and we're going to be hosting author events throughout the year.
That's the cool part. That is really going to be good. Now, do you have it labeled? Some stores forget sci-fi and thriller and suspense and true crime and all. Do you do that too?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yep.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Where did we go recently? Oh, we were at a library book sale, and it was a little bit. We couldn't find sci-fi for my husband. We couldn't find it, and they had Star Trek there, but it wasn't really labeled. It's almost as if sometimes it's a forgotten genre. But I know I went to a book sale, and what is this thing now the kids like? It's like almost like horror. Oh, I can't think of the name of it. And then everything's black. And I know the pages. What are they called? The pages turn, and it's like a cartoon book. What is that called?
Oh, like a graphic novel.
Graphic novel is
sure.
big.
Hmm?
I've tried it. Do you like it?
I didn't grow up with them. I was never a comic book kid.
No.
I know a lot of people. A lot of people were. They grew up with their comic books and graphic novels. I think are a great way to introduce, particularly younger people, to good pieces of literature.
Right.
But it's not the end. You should evolve through that to the better books.
Right.
But I think they're terrific, and there are a lot of
colorful
kids
and
that
fun looking.
anything that introduces people to reading in a unique or different way. I'm all for it.
My granddaughter, hello, Faye, she is interested in animation.
Mm-hmm.
Animating. Now, is that what they do in those books? Animation?
Well, there's anime, which is a Japanese form of illustration.
Right.
That's very, very popular.
Yeah.
There are a lot of cartoons based on that on television, and the books are incredibly popular. A lot of different popular series, and we just can't. That's the kind of stuff we just can never get enough of, because it's the same as you were talking about fantasy and science fiction. Once you're a fan of that genre, you'll read all of it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to keep those popular genres in stock sometimes.
I'll read a sci-fi book if there's a possibility it could happen, it'll get my attention. It just kind of like borderline that it could happen. But if it's just too far out there, I would rather get into a real thriller, whether true or fiction, that really holds. You know the author, Robert Parker.
Sure.
Okay. He passed away too young, but he did the Spencer series.
Yeah, the Spencer for Hire TV
Loved
show.
his style. He'd get to the point, short sentences. Ever see these books now where maybe sometimes a book group the person will choose it, and I'll start to read it, and then I'm going back to see who is this, who was that. Too many characters, and the premise is great, and then I'm like, this isn't worth it. I got a couple of authors down here that I told them I'd read their book, and I can't describe it. I don't know what's happening to some of the books. There's just too much info.
Sometimes, the art of writing a novel is hard.
Yeah.
If you read a good novel, a real good book, it seems so easy. It seems so effortless.
Yeah.
It's like, boy, I could have thought of a story like that. And you really enjoy it, but trying to actually do it is very difficult. And doing it well is even harder. It takes practice. It's like any other skill, any other art form. You have to do it a lot. You have to practice. You have to learn the best ways, to do things, and and in school, one of my when I get up on my soapbox about education and how it works with writing, there's too much, in my opinion, too much emphasis on grammar, spelling, vocabulary, getting ready for the SATs, learning words and phrases and things that you don't actually use on a daily basis.
Right, reminds me of math.
But there's a lack of learning storytelling.
Yeah.
And the part of the reason there's such a gap, and what that gap has caused, and at least in my opinion, when you look out at, the problems we have in politics today, in the culture wars and right wing and left wing, you've got these people throwing stories.
Yep.
And people don't realize they're rehearing stories.
Yeah.
And they don't realize how a narrative works and how and all that, and that's part of the problem. And I wish we taught narrative and we taught story writing and interpretation of stories more in the school environment,
right,
and less SAT vocabulary
and the MCAS stuff. Oh my God, some kids just don't test well. They don't. My own son went into it, and I think we had a nervous feeling. So the teacher was smart. He called in the assistant principal, and my son went out and walked around with him. The two of them joked together. By the time he brought him back in the classroom, he just needed that special.
Right.
I understand that. I learned best when it was individualized learning. And it was something hard. Individual. So, Steve, you have written 3 books, you said?
I have 3, yes.
What were they?
Well, we mentioned Scared to Death that I co-wrote with Brian. I also wrote Confessions of the Meek and the Valiant, which is a South Boston crime thriller. And then I wrote Manassas, which is a historical novel based on the history and legends of Block Island.
That is so cool. They're all different.
They're all very. It's something that if a new writer came to me and said, these are the books I want to write, I would tell them don't do it, because you're jumping genres, they're different topics.
Yeah.
And most successful authors, and I say most, usually stick to their genre. They're romance writers, or they're thriller writers, or they're sci-fi writers, and that's how they build their audience. Yeah. But I chose to do it differently, but I did that knowingly.
Yeah.
So as I always tell the writers, it's okay to break the rule if you know you're breaking the rule.
If you know what you're doing. Well, have you got another one coming up?
I have 2 other books ready for release that I've been working on over the years. One, I may not release for a while. I'm looking at some alternative publishing options.
Yeah.
Which is a young adult book that surrounds a baseball team.
Yeah.
And then I've got a second book which I may release probably for next year, maybe this summer, when we get into the show season, which is a collection of short stories.
Huh. What do you think the best season is for authors to get into exhibits and shows and that type of thing?
Really, there are 2 schools of thought on that. Number 1 is to release for the Christmas season.
Yes.
After all, everybody's buying presents. So if you're going to put a new book out there, and it's got a good hook, Christmas is great.
Hence, December 2nd.
Exactly right.
The Rhode Island Authors Expo.
The second school of thought is to release right after Christmas, because yes, there are a lot of people buy things in November and December, but it's a very noisy time of year.
Yeah.
January, February, it's a little more quiet. And now you get into the show season, which starts in the spring, summer, and fall.
Yeah,
Art shows, festivals.
What do you call them? The like the Castleberry fairs and all that type of thing.
It's all kinds of festivals and fairs and expos and.
Yeah. I had an author say to me one time, "Why are you scheduling me to go to an arts and crafts fair?" I said, "You watch, because you're going to be unusual in this craft fair. They're going to say, oh, there's an author over here. You're different."
Exactly. And one of my favorite places to send authors is to a farmer's market.
Yes.
Because, people are going there, everything there's local.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to buy your tomatoes and your pumpkin or whatever you're going to buy at the farmer's market.
Yep.
But nobody goes to a farmer's market to browse.
No.
You go because it's a destination to purchase something. And if you're sitting there as an author with a pile of books, you know that person coming to the farmer's market has got a couple of $20 bills in their pocket.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Or they wouldn't be there.
Do you see a lot of authors who say, well, why would you send me to a senior center? I had one who was first time out of the gate. She says, why are you sending me there? And I said, well, why don't you watch and wait and see? They read, and they also have grandchildren. She sold 10 in an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I tell people, go. It's worth your while.
Well, we sent, and the whole point is that we sent one of our authors to an elementary school to do a reading. Yeah. And it was great that they had like 200 kids came to the assembly. Yeah. And she read her book, and they all loved it.
Yes.
And then she came back afterwards and said, I didn't sell a single copy. And I said, it's because 5-year-olds don't walk around with American Express cards.
No.
But the grandmothers do.
I know that. Were the grandmothers there at all? The parents?
So that's why you go to that senior center, like you were saying, because they're the ones that buy the books for the kids.
Exactly. I know that libraries, many libraries will allow that, and of course bookstores. Have you been up to Deb Horan's Book Lovers Gourmet up in Webster?
Oh yeah, very familiar with it.
Very good. They're very popular too, where they're having their authors there. I sent a lot of them up there. It's not really that far, guys. I mean, just Webster. If you want to just get on Route 16, and if you're coming from Rhode Island, just, come up 146, get on 16, instead of heading for Uxbridge, head the other way. Head towards Douglas and Webster. Just keep going straight.
It's just New England. It's not that far.
That type of thing. But now, is your new bookstore, your location, is it, would you say, large or medium, or how would you call it?
It's the store itself. The retail store is about 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But we also added office space for our designers, book designers, so we could publish.
Yeah.
And then we added a big warehouse area.
Right.
So we also wholesale the books that we publish.
Yeah.
And we started during COVID. We taught ourselves how to sell online better.
Oh.
And so we have an entire selection of used, old, antiquarian, rare, unique, odd, unusual books that we sell only online that we warehouse in the back.
That's interesting. Have you ever been in Worcester to the Antiquarian Society?
That I have not, no.
If you'd like that. It's a big building, very historical. I guess they got just about everything in there. I don't know. History, if you got family up here and that type of thing. So, Steve, tell us again, how can they reach you and where you're located?
Sure. Stillwater Books is located at 1745 Main Street in West Warwick. And you can reach us either by phone at 401-475-1979 or at our website, stillwaterbooksri.com, or through our publishing website, stillwaterpress.com.
Now, I mean many authors, and self-publishing is great, but if they say to me, Jan, do you know of a good publishing company? Okay if I steer them to you?
Oh, please do.
Okay. All right. I think a lot of them are afraid they won't be able to afford it.
Well, there's expenses involved. But what's the bigger problem is people not understanding the business and not understanding how the business parts work.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 stages of publishing. First, you've got the creative part. You write the thing and be great at that.
Yep.
Then when that's done, you've got to design the thing. The cover, the typesetting, the editing, all those physical things that have to be done.
Right.
Then when that's done, you've got to market the thing.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of authors fail. Because not that they can't market their book, but because they don't understand how bookstores work or how libraries work.
I do. That's why I help. Yeah.
Where they walk into a bookstore with their new book and they say, would you like one? And the bookstore says, no, why would I want that? And then they're just crestfallen. It's like, what can they do from there?
And I tell them, Amazon's great. It's fun, okay? Have a blast. But then nothing beats being in person and giving a presentation and book signing. Nothing beats it.
Right. So there's a lot of education you need to be successful.
To get you, now to publish it, how long does it take if somebody says, Steve, here's my book, will you take care of it? You'll do the cover, or can they pick out the cover?
We have designers in-house.
And they'll pick out.
Yep, the designers go ahead and do their thing, and they give you a few different ideas that you can work with them.
Okay.
We have editors in-house that will fix your editing, copy editing, and whatnot.
So it's not black and white that you just have to do the cover. Okay.
No, we do it all in-house.
You do. You know what I also love?
Then we distribute.
The back of a book too. I think I've seen you do it because Stillwater Press is under it. Is getting a photo of the author on the back cover. I think it's so important.
Depending on the book, the back cover is a selling point.
Yeah.
So if you pick up a book in a bookstore because you like the cover, first thing you do is turn it over and read the back.
Yeah.
So that's your selling point.
Or
so,
like you open the cover and you're reading this
So
side.
if you, the author, are one of the selling points, it should be on the back cover.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a lot of experience, maybe you don't have that, you don't have all the education and experience, it's your first book, then maybe you can put your bio on the inside and leave something else on the back cover that's more appealing to a book buyer.
They all kind of look alike these days. They're the soft cover and they're all about this size. Can they choose a size or
There's several standard sizes to choose from.
Hardcover or soft?
Hardcover or paperback.
Of course, it's going to be
color or black and white.
We're going to have to say goodbye. We're going to get Steve back on because he's got 2 books coming up.
I hope so.
Let's get him out there.
Fingers crossed.
Steve, one more time, how can they reach you?
At best ways through the web at stillwaterbooksri.com or stillwaterpress.com.
And if you are an author, you've got a book ready and you'd like to have it published, don't be shy. Contact Steve and Dawn. They own Stillwater Press, and they are in West Warwick, and they've got their own bookstore, publishing thing. You'd love it, absolutely. And December 2nd, once again, 10 to 4, coming up at the Crown Plaza in Warwick, Rhode Island, off of Route 1...
Right off Route 95.
Right off Route 95.
Easy on and off.
And there's no fee. You just walk in and go, oh.
Oh, it's free. We want you to come in and buy a bunch of books. So, no charge.
And when they say there's a lot, I tell you, I was so overwhelmed. I went up to one of the authors. I said, are you overwhelmed? And she goes, yeah. She was one of the authors. But she was having a blast. Do they have any coffee or anything for people, water?
There's usually a concessions area and all. We've gotten presentations and workshops and things.
It gets them to stay a little longer, too. That's
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you for being with us, Steve.
Well, thank you again.
Hello to Dawn.
I will.
And we'll see you next time I'll be my guest.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.